Good afternoon. I hope this finds you well. Welcome to our Spirit of Scotland update. I've brought you on this beautiful November afternoon, although it is cold, hence the bonnet on the head. I've brought you down to Crookbridge, just outside Stirling, which is at the confluence between the Bannockburn and the Pelstream. And of course we know that this was an area that was significant to the Battle of Bannockburn in 1314. So I've just brought you down here for a little update to show you around the area of the field, which we know is unfortunately being lost to the development of a superstore and a car showroom and other bits and pieces. So I like to come down here just to get a feel for the area. I like to walk the battlefield to get a sense of what perhaps went on back in 1314 during the battle. The area that I'm walking through just now has been pegged out. There's some pre-development pegs for the developers on the ground, and there's little flags everywhere, which I presume have been put down by the archaeologists who are doing a study in this area before any development takes place. So I'm being very careful. I hope they don't mind. I'm being very careful walking about here, that I don't trample on their little flags. But I want to show you around before this place is lost forever under tarmac and concrete, just to give you an idea of what we have here at the moment, and then you'll see the changes that take place. So the area between the Bannockburn and the Pelstream was considered by some to be the area of the English camp. Personally, I think the English camp was a wee bit more south of here, or it could have been the area that was perhaps part of the route when the English were fleeing from the battlefield, chased by the Scottish army. They would have fled over here, across the Pelstream up towards Stirling Castle, across the Bannockburn and the Pelstream towards the River Forth, where many of them drowned. So it could be either of these events that took place here back on the 24th of June 1314. Now, I mentioned about the archaeologists being down here, so what would they be looking for? What would they hope to find? Because at the end of the day, the battle was, 711 years ago? That's a long time. And in the immediate aftermath of the battle, the Scottish army would have scoured this field, and they would have gotten any discarded weapons, they would refurbish them and reuse them for their own purposes. So they would have went over this thoroughly, and with regards to the camp and the baggage train, that would have been plundered. That was fair spoil for the victors of the battlefield. So in the immediate aftermath of the battle, there probably wasn't a lot left to find. So what do the archaeologists hope to find here? What could have happened? Well, during camp life, things do get discarded and things do get lost. So perhaps they could find something along those lines. Or if the rout did take place here, if you can imagine hundreds, perhaps thousands of English soldiers fleeing in this direction, fleeing in panic for their lives. And as they reach the burns, they would be looking to discard any excess clothing or materials that they have which were slowing them down. So they would get discarded and thrown, and perhaps the remnants of some of these have been left on the battlefield. So the archaeology has been carried out by a company called Guard Archaeology, and they will do an excellent job within the scope, within the parameters which they have been set, I'm sure. Those parameters, as I know it, are that they will dig up 5% of the area that's being put up for development. They will hand dig 2%. They will metal detect the area, and they will do some ground penetrating radar across the area and some aerial photography to study this area, which I presume will take in LiDAR. And hopefully from that, wouldn't it be fantastic if they could find something that just definitively states that yes, part of the battle did take place here. That would be fantastic, wouldn't it? It would seal the deal, because we do know beyond any shadow of reasonable doubt that the battle took place between the Pelstream and the Bannockburn. But we can only put a 99% figure on that until such times as we find something, find that golden chalice, as they say, in the ground that says, oh, yep, here are the arrowheads, here are the spears or the swords or remnants of the baggage train. It would be fantastic if we could find that. But as I say, those would be scoured and plundered by the victorious Scottish Army. And they would corrode throughout the years. It's 711 years ago. We live in a wet climate. So the probability is quite low, but we hold out hope. But there is something else that they could perhaps find. Where are the bodies? Where are the dead bodies from the battlefield? Now you might think it's quite simple to go to a battlefield and look for the dead bodies, and that will give you confirmation of where the battle took place. But it's been notoriously difficult. And right throughout Europe, they've had difficulty in finding the bodies after a battle has taken place. And only in a handful of cases have they done so. But we do know that the bodies were buried down here, because they tell us so in the chronicles. John Barber tells us that the nobles, the English nobles who died, were taken off the battlefield and buried on consecrated ground. So they would have perhaps been taken up to St Ninian's or Cambus Kenneth Abbey. Religious, consecrated ground. That's what the nobles got. But the normal people in the army, they were buried on the field of battle. That's what John Barber tells us. They were buried in great pits, plural, great pits on the battlefield. So it would, wouldn't it? It would just seal the deal if we could find some evidence of that down here in this area. Now, there's a lot of development taking place across the battlefield in recent years. We've got the A91 just to my left over here. You'll see the cars on the A91 over there. Now that cuts right through the battlefield, and there's been a lot of industrial development with car showrooms and other such things taking place. But never during any of those developments has any evidence of burial pits been found, which can only lead you to believe that they've either been missed or that they still remain to be found somewhere. So wouldn't it be great if Guard archaeology could find something down here? Once again, the probability probably fairly low after all these years, but we do hold out hope, don't we? So since I'm here, let me just show you around. I'll take you down to the Pelstream, which is a fair trickle, a mere trickle of its former self, because back in 1314 it would have been quite a substantial obstacle, and you'll see that when I show you the banking that leads down to it. I'll take you down and show you the Pelstream. We'll walk around a bit of the ground here just to give you a feel for what's here, because there is no doubt in my mind that this was a significant area during day 2 of the Battle of Bannockburn in 1314. It's going to be a real shame to lose it. So let's at least save some of it on film for posterity. So come with me as I have a wee walk around. This is just a short video, and let's look and see what we can find. Here I am walking down to an area which would have been, back in 1314, the confluence of the Pelstream and the Bannockburn. For the Bannockburn used to come in here, past an area, those woods you see on the right hand side there. If memory serves me correct, that's Ingram wood. So they must have stood on fairly solid ground. But the Bannockburn actually came across here and then doubled back in itself, and the Pelstream joined it roughly in this area. But the Bannockburn was rerouted when the A91 was built. But you can even see from the ground as it is now that immediately in the area of the confluence, it was probably quite marshy. It's marshy now, I'm pretty sure it'd be marshy back then. And Ingram Wood, if I remember correctly, is there. That would be a bit more substantial back in the day. The Pelstream itself at the moment, as I say, is a mere trickle of what it used to be. But let's go further along and see if we can get a better view of it and of the bankings going down on either side. Here I am walking along the southern bank of the Pelstream. Perhaps you can get an idea of the slope. There's the high ground of the Cars, and then it slopes down into the ditch of the Pelstream. So let's see if we can get down there and show you what it's like today, which, as I say, is a mere trickle of what it used to be. Oh, here goes. That's a bit steeper than you think. Well, it's been dammed up there by a falling log. But as I say, as you can see, the Pelstream today, it's been drained and culverted over the years, and it truly is a mere trickle of what it used to be. But perhaps you can see on either side there the bankings that lead away from it. Now that banking must go up about 5 or 6 metres on either side. So you can see that this would provide a substantial obstacle back in the day to any English troops who were fleeing in panic, trying to get up to Stirling Castle for safety, or just generally running for their lives. Here we go. Sun's just beginning to set in the west there. In the direction you're looking, Stirling Castle is probably about a mile beyond those trees. In that direction there. And as we swing around, you can just see the trees down in that ditch. You won't see the base of these trees because I reckon they're 5 or 6 metres down where the Pelstream burn runs. And there, Ingram Wood and the area where back in 1314 the confluence of the Pelstream and the Bannockburn would be. But the Bannockburn has been rerouted during the construction of the A91, and the Pelstream is now on the other side of the A91, which you'll see beyond those trees as we look eastwards across this area of Crookbridge, just outside Stirling. So that's the battlefield, the campsite, or the route area of English troops. But let there be no doubt that this area did play a significant part in the Battle of Bannockburn on the 24th of June 1314. So there you go. There's a short update of some of the developments which are taking place down at Crookbridge, just outside Stirling, at the area between the Bannockburn and the Pelstream, which I've no doubt in my mind played a significant part in the Battle of Bannockburn. Now, after the battle, the Scots had chased English from the field, plundered the field, but what did they do with the prisoners Well, this is where, for me, King Robert the Bruce showed the ultimate kingship and the measure of the man that he was. Because he showed great magnanimity to the captors, sending some home without ransom. Others, of course, drew a hefty ransom, and also would be bargained to get back his wife and daughter and others who had been horribly imprisoned after they had been captured by the English. Robert the Bruce, his brothers had been murdered by the English, and he had every right to show no mercy, but he didn't. He showed great magnanimity. He showed great statesmanship and kingship by treating the prisoners well, and as I say, sending some home without ransom. So that marks Bannockburn as one of the most, or the most significant battlefield in Scottish history. The people who were involved in that: King Robert the Bruce, James Douglas, Walter Stewart, Thomas Randolph, all these great nobles who went on to fight and defeat the invading English on numerous occasions. But it's not just them that we should be remembering. There's the bakers, the carpenters, the butchers, the farmers, lots of whom came willingly to fight for Bruce. They weren't conscripted. They were tired of the oppression and tyranny that they endured under the invading English. And they came willingly and were trained by Bruce to defeat the elite of the English army, the elite army of Europe under heavy cavalry. And he trained his schildtrons to go from being defensive to attacking formations, and proved that foot soldiers could defeat mounted cavalry. And this victory would have resounded throughout Europe. After Wallace's defeat at Falkirk, Bruce had learned so much. And I believe that European battles thereafter would learn a lot from what Bruce done here back in that day in 1314. So it's not just an important historic Scottish battlefield, it's important in a European context and a world context for what took place back in the day. So what are we going to do about that? Sadly, for day 2 of the battle, there is nothing down on the Carselands to commemorate where the battle took place. No memorial, no flag, and we should be remembering these people who gave their lives to fight for a cause. And that's what Spirit of Scotland is looking for. We're looking, ultimately, for the powers that be to put their finger on the map and say that this is where the battle took place. For we know 99% for certain that we can put our finger between the Pelstream and the Bannockburn and say this is where it happened. Finding the bodies, or if Guard archaeology finds some artefacts, that would seal the deal. Thereafter, what we need to be doing is working together to get a fitting memorial for the events that took place that day. So with that, we have asked for Historic Environment Scotland, the National Trust for Scotland, Stirling Council, to sit down round the table and discuss how we can take this forward, how we can protect and preserve the remaining areas of the Battle of Bannockburn battlefield before they too are lost to the incremental development which is ravaging this battlefield. Let's protect and preserve what is left, and let's get a memorial to commemorate the sacrifices that these brave people made that day. And let's show the rest of the world that Scotland really does care about our history, culture and heritage. So watch this channel for updates that will come in the future. I will be doing a film along with Max Muir from Robert the Bruce Genius of Bannockburn fame about the dead bodies of the battlefields. So look forward to that coming up, and stay in touch, subscribe, like this video, share it with your friends, because the more people we have taking an interest, the more chance we have of protecting, preserving and enhancing the remaining areas of the battlefield and other aspects of our culture and history. So thank you, have a great afternoon, take care.